Hey everyone, I wanted to take a moment and let you know that starting in January, we will be moving the show to Mondays. Our hope is that this will give you time during your work commute to give us a listen instead of having to wait for the weekend. The first episode in 2021 will air on January 4th, where my wife Bethany and I will be discussing the rarely known as a comic book movie, Josie and the Pussycats. So start looking for the show to drop on Mondays. In fact, let's start calling them Moving Panel Mondays. I hope you enjoyed today's show. What do superheroes do for Christmas? Well, they get into bar fights, they try to find a farting duck, and creepily stalk people on Christmas Eve. On this episode of Moving Panels, we discuss the Christmas episode of Justice League, Comfort and Joy. Welcome to Moving Panels, the podcast where we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. I'm your host. I'm Mr. White Christmas. I'm Mr. Cool. I'm Laramy Wells. And joining me on this festive Christmas episode, I wouldn't touch him with a 39.5-foot pole, it's Blake Fowler.
'Tis the season to be merry and bright, Laramy. It's like deja vu all over again. I'm happy to be back, dude.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to have you back. I think when you came back the first time, you were the first repeat full episode host, and I think you're the first three-peat.
Hold on, we've done the three-peat now. Is that right?
We've done the three-peat now.
First of all, I would like to step back and thank all those who've been there to support me along the way and have believed in me. I'm being told we're here to do a podcast on comic book movies and TV shows.
Yes, enough about you. Let's talk about Justice League.
My fault.
So we are, 'tis the season, and just like we did a Halloween episode back at Halloween, thought it would be fitting for us to do a Christmas episode, and luckily we are doing a really good episode for this one.
One of the best cartoon hero TV show episodes of all time.
Oh yeah. This is one of those that ranks high on the Christmas watch list every year for me. You know, it's up there. You gotta watch Charlie Brown, you gotta watch Rudolph, and for me, you have to watch Comfort and Joy from Justice League.
I remember watching it when I was in high school. So the show ran from, I guess, 01 to 03, 04, kind of. So I was in high school at that point in time. But it's the first time I've gone back and really watched and paid attention to it. And it just got on the list along with the cartoon Grinch. Don't give me the live one. But the cartoon Grinch and now Comfort and Joy will be my go-to Christmas watches. Okay,
so the cartoon Grinch versus the Jim Carrey. What about the Benedict Cumberbatch Grinch?
I haven't seen it yet because I missed it when it came out and just haven't had the chance to sit down and watch it. But I've got a little niece this year. Shout out to Shiloh. So I will probably sit down and watch it with her this year as her first Christmassy. She knows kind of what's going on. Watch. So it'll be exciting. So I don't know about Benedict, but Jim Carrey, not for me. Not for me.
I'm a fan of that one. I am actually a fan of that one. All right, so
riddle me that another time.
So back to this episode. Blake was mentioning how old he was. I won't go into how old I was when I was watching this, but I wasn't in high school. This episode aired December 13th, so right before Christmas, back in 2003, so many, many years ago. It is actually from the Justice League, now not Justice League Unlimited that this series turned into, but from the 2 seasons of the Justice League series. It is actually the only one-shot of the 2 seasons of Justice League. Every other episode was either a 2-parter or a 3-parter, which actually this episode leads into the 3-part finale that was called Star-Crossed, big event with the Thanagarians and whatnot. And so even though this is a one-shot episode, it actually helps further the story that we're going to lead into with Starcrossed. And we'll get into that a little bit more. But that was the foundation behind this episode. You mentioned you were in high school when you watched this and all of your stuff. But for those who've never seen it, we're not going to go into great detail because this really is only a 23-minute episode of Justice League. And so if we get into too much detail, you might as well not watch the episode. So we'll give you a little bit of of highlights of this episode and kind of get the idea behind the story.
Yeah, give yourself a present and go check out the episode.
So the episode opens with the Justice League saving 2 planets, let's call them Hoth and Alderaan, from colliding. It's a snow planet and a regular planet. In fact, the planet looks very much like Earth in the episode. But there's
a lot of crab people.
Yeah,
a lot of crab people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Octopus-looking people.
Sure.
But they save them, and then they decide, all right, it's time to take a break for Christmas. I didn't know superheroes could take a break for Christmas.
Yeah, why is the Justice League pausing for Christmas break there? Not in college. This is not time to go home and see the family. The Earth is still spinning, and crime is still abundant. I would like to see the statistics on the spike in crime when criminals realize the Justice League is on Christmas break.
Now they don't all. So Green Lantern and Hawkgirl, they decide to stay on the snow planet, mainly so that Green Lantern can show Hawkgirl that he can snowboard.
Show off.
Flash then heads back to Central City, doing his typical, being the heart of the Justice League. He's going to go help some orphans, and he's going to be Santa Claus. And then Martian Manhunter, who really has no feelings on Christmas whatsoever, is invited by Superman to spend Christmas in Smallville with the Kents.
Probably most relate to Martian Manhunter at my age right now. And definitely when I was younger, I was the Flash. You wanted to run around and give everybody a good bit of Christmas spirit. But I definitely get where Martian Manhunter's coming from as I get older.
Well, and chances are there's a bunch of people right now who are probably feeling more like Batman, who is in the opening. But then that's all he's in because he volunteers to be on watch duty at the Watchtower.
He's the ultimate Scrooge. Come on.
Yeah. Which I'm going to get into. I'm not going to diss Batman too bad in this episode. I'm going to get into why I think he's not featured. The only member of the Justice League that does not appear in this episode at all is Wonder Woman.
Has she gone home for the holidays?
No clue. We don't know. We even get a reference later in the episode about Supergirl and Batgirl and where they are. But in terms of the Justice League's 7, it's 7 of them, right? 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
No, there's
yes.
8 of them. 8 of them.
Is there 8?
Yes.
Okay.
Because you got Green Lantern, Hawkgirl,
right?
Flash. Nope, there's 7 of them.
Okay, yeah,
Superman.
Mighty is 7. Yeah, okay.
Right. Look, leave me alone. Snyder only put 6 of them in the movie.
Hey, you will not talk about the Snyder Cut right now. Do you understand me? Okay. That's my Christmas gift to myself. Okay.
All right. So there's no Wonder Woman. Batman's only in the opening, and then the remaining 5 have their own little stories, which we'll get into a little bit later. So typically, we're going to do this episode a little differently. Typically, we start getting into the characters. However, these characters are so iconic, and I know that throughout this podcast, we are going to cover Superman and Flash and Green Lantern probably so much that I don't really want to hit them in this episode. This episode's more about the story than it is the characters. So really, the only character I want to talk about is one that we probably won't get an awful lot of chances to talk about on this show, and that's Ultra Humanite, the one villain, quote unquote, that appears in this episode.
Yeah, villain, anti-hero here towards the end of this, but we'll get there.
Yeah, so what do you know about Ultra Humanite?
I know enough to be dangerous, but I also don't know enough that I'd love to be educated right now. I'm sure our listeners would too.
Yeah, that's a lead-in. So Ultra Humanite debuted in the comic books, in fact, way back when Superman was introduced. He's actually a Superman villain. He comes from Action Comics number 13, so just a little over a year after Superman debuted. Ultra Humanite debuted, actually exactly a year, because it was in June of 1939. Superman debuted in June of 1938. Ultra Humanite in June of 1939. He is actually credited as the first supervillain of Superman's.
Knowledge drop, Laramy Wells. Nice.
Yeah, and in fact, he's one of the first supervillains ever. So just like Superman gets sometimes credited as the first ever superhero, Ultra Humanite is credited as one of the first ever supervillains. Again, before Lex Luthor. We did not have Lex Luthor yet in the comics. Ultra Humanite was the original villain for Superman. There's not really a clear origin for him in the comics. We know he was a mad scientist. He has no name. There was no name ever given to him. He called himself Ultra Humanite, and that's the only thing we know. He did experiments on himself in order to give himself what he referred to as the most agile and learned brain on Earth.
Okay.
But in his original characterization in the comic books, he is not this albino ape. He's a dude. He's a small, elderly kind of looking, because he's kind of hunched. In fact, at one point in the comic books, he was paralyzed. He's a bald dude. And that's what you see when you see him in his early incarnation in the comic book. Now, I'll get into where the gorilla body comes from.
I was going to say, it certainly gives me hope as a small, bald dude that if I work hard enough and strive long enough and experiment as many times as possible, I too can become muscular and learned.
Well, there's a little bit more to it, and I'll get into that. I do want to talk real quick about, since again, we won't get to talk about him an awful lot, because he only appears in 3 episodes of Justice League. So we won't get to probably talk about him a lot, which is why I wanted to mention here. In the Justice League animated series, he is voiced by an actor named Ian Buchanan. Many people may not be familiar with him, especially people who listen to this show, because he's a soap opera actor.
Actually, Laramy, for all of you out there, if you're in the Christmas spirit, Ian Buchanan stars in the very popular Mermaid for Christmas. Go check that out.
I was not aware of that. So
yeah, happy holidays, folks.
There you go. But what I know him from, like I said, is several soap operas. Not know him as in I watched them, but I was familiar with his work. He's appeared on, multiple episodes. You got to think soap operas, air Monday through Friday every week. But he's appeared in The Bold and the Beautiful, General Hospital, Days of Our Lives, All My Children. So he is a big soap opera actor. But he is the voice.
Actually popped into Panic Room with Jodie Foster. Not to cut you off there. I don't know if you don't want to take any thunder, but he's in Panic Room as well. So he's been in a couple of things.
Well, that's awesome. But here he is as the Ultra Humanite. Pretty much, if you're not familiar with the Ultra Humanite, imagine Kelsey Grammer's Beast, but he's white with a giant head.
Okay. I see it. You paint a very clear picture. I'm with it.
Yeah. So let's talk about where he gets his gorilla body. So in the comic books, Ultra Humanite, again, he is a frail older man. He typically did most of his villainy through thugs and hired hands, and he was just the brains behind the operation, kind of the same way Lex Luthor eventually would become. And so what he started to do was he figured out a way to transfer his mind into other bodies. And he would first do this kind of through surgery. Pretty much ultimately kill a person and transfer his mind into their body, kind of a Frankenstein type thing a little bit. Then eventually he learned how to do it without doing the surgery, probably had to clean it up, for the comics and all. When, the comic code probably came through and all that. His most famous body, I should say, was a character called Dolores Winters, female character, and the reason why the Ultra Humanite decided to be this female is not only was she a woman, which, again, you got to think about the time, we're talking probably 50s when he decided to do this in the comics. Police wouldn't suspect a woman of all of these heinous acts and all that. And Dolores Winters was also a Hollywood actress, and so he had this high profile of being able to kind of hide behind this persona. And that's kind of where that came from. But he still, of course, couldn't be anything more than just the brains behind the operation. Because here he is in the body of a woman, and he doesn't have all that other ability. So he kept switching bodies until he eventually decided to settle. And he decided to settle on a gorilla from Gorilla City, same place Gorilla Grodd is from. And this allowed him to take advantage of the gorillas at Gorilla City's kind of mutated form, and it gave him the added strength, the added durability he knew that the body would be able to handle his advanced mind, because as we know with Gorilla Grodd, they have this higher intellect, the gorillas, Gorilla City. And so that is where the gorilla body came from. Don't ask me where the red spiked suspenders come from, but that is where the gorilla body comes from.
I was searching Amazon for the suspenders, actually, but now I'll cross those off my list.
Now, of course, all of this happens prior. In the DC world, we have pre-Crisis and post-Crisis. This all happened pre-Crisis. Once Crisis on Infinite Earth happened in the 80s, there was a little bit of his background that was kind of altered, but it wasn't really enough. We still don't have... I think they gave him a name for the original scientist, but it doesn't really hold. It's still kind of just unknown and all that, but that's Ultra Humanite. He's in this episode. He is the only villain, although we'll get into the story. He doesn't do an awful lot of villainy, whatever that word would be.
Villainry there.
Yeah, there you go. For this episode, but I thought it was good to give at least a little bit of the information behind the origin and characterization of the Ultra Humanite.
I mean, being a superhero, Superman fanatic that you are, and being as that Ultra Humanite was the first super villain, would you like to see in the current landscape a little more spotlight shown on Ultra Humanite?
No.
Okay, cool. All right, good talk, man. I'm moving on.
No, I think Ultra Humanite is an interesting character in the comics, but I honestly think that Gorilla Grodd has kind of taken the spot of the hyper-intelligent gorilla.
I can see that.
And it works better for Flash, which Ultra Humanite is paired up with in this episode.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I just think that Ultra Humanite kind of fell into a hole. He can't be the evil mad scientist because Lex Luthor kind of filled that role, and he can't be the hyper-intelligent gorilla because Gorilla Grodd has kind of filled that role. So he kind of sits in this gap between the two of them.
All his roles were outsourced. That's unfortunate for him, but, whatever.
So aside from the characters, I kind of thought about, is there anyone else I want to talk about in this episode? Because there really aren't a lot of things going on in this episode. So what I decided I wanted to talk about is the writer of this episode, Paul Dini. For those of you not familiar with Paul Dini is one of the most amazing writers of DC.
I would argue not one of, but the most amazing. Like all the seminal stories that I look at, almost all of them are Paul Dini. Whether it be on the TV shows or actual comic books, like Paul Dini's the guy.
Yeah, definitely for the animated series, I would probably argue in the comic books. I think I would put Jeff Jones just a little bit above him.
Yeah, Jeff Jones. Yeah, I got you. Okay,
but I do agree for the animated series. I mean, and especially when it comes to Christmas episodes, because Paul Dini also famously wrote another episode, which we might talk about one year for Christmas, the Christmas with the Joker episode from Batman the Animated Series. That was also written by Paul Dini.
Good stuff.
He also co-wrote the Holiday Nights episode of the new Batman Adventures.
Some of the best stuff right there.
Yeah. He even wrote in the comics some Christmas episodes with Christmas issues with Batman, Christmas storylines. And so I honestly think this is why Batman is not in this episode. Because I think Paul Dini has done his Batman.
Astute observation on your part.
And so this was a chance for him to do other characters.
Okay, I'll give you that. As much as I miss the guy in the black cape, I'm okay with that.
No, and Paul Dini, I mean, the guy's got something with Christmas because he's written all of these, and I won't get into this an awful lot. This will actually be featured for those of you who are following me on YouTube and TikTok. Moving Panels Striptease is actually going to cover another character he created called Jingle Bell. And if you're not familiar, Jingle Bell, it was a independent comics, not associated with the DC universe or anything. She is the spoiled teenage daughter of Santa Claus. And he wrote several kind of self-contained comics. They eventually put it all together in one book called The Whole Package. And And she's not really a part of any universe or anything. There's no connection to any other characters. Like I said, it's kind of self-contained. But it's very interesting to read through, and why I wanted to kind of also mention it here is because not only does it have that Christmas connection, but it also reminds you that Paul Dini is also one of the guys that created Harley Quinn, because the characters are so similar, except for the fact that Jingle Bell is meant to be more of a anti-hero. She doesn't really do villainy, but she goes against the norm. And so it was a very interesting thing. But like I said, I'm leaving that for, if you're more interested in that, check us out on YouTube, TikTok, and you'll get more information about Jingle Bell.
Yeah, I didn't know about Jingle Bell, so that's some good information to have to go check out, some light reading to do. And for those of you that aren't following at Moving Panels on TikTok, let's just say that the striptease moniker, one of the best naming moments in all of social media history, Laramy. Kudos to you and your team for that one.
Yeah, I have to give that credit to an old friend of mine, Kristen. She actually pitched that name for the name of the podcast. And when I decided to use Moving Panels, I just kind of put it to the side. I thought it was clever. And then when I was like, okay, I'm going to do these short little videos for TikTok, I thought striptease was a pretty clever name.
Really good.
All right, so let's get into the story. Now, as is the case with a lot of the television shows, there's not really a strong connection to the comic books. So we're really just going to kind of talk about the stories themselves, how well they developed a Christmas episode. And we're going to, even though they're intertwined in the episode itself, we're going to hit them individually. So there are the three stories. Green Lantern and Hawkgirl have their story. Flash and Ultra Humanite have their story, and then Superman and Martian Manhunter have theirs. And so we're just going to hit them one by one. So let's start with Green Lantern and Hawkgirl. So it starts off with Green Lantern and Hawkgirl, who are slowly developing a relationship. It's very clear. Even if you're
a lot of tension here,
yeah.
A lot of tension.
Even if you're not watching the series and haven't seen the episodes leading up to this, it is the romantic tension between them is evident in this episode.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so Green Lantern decides to show Hawkgirl how he likes to unwind, how he likes to have fun, and, shows him snowboarding. They build a snowman. A great moment where he shows how to make a snow angel, and he's like, look at my wings, and she just kind of looks at him.
But it's like, watching that part, I couldn't help but think a lot of times we get caught up in looking at heroes as saviors, and forget that for the most part they are quote unquote people like us. Like, they have these things they enjoy doing to unwind and relax, and like, this is part of Green Lantern's his enjoyment of the holidays.
Yeah, and it is kind of fun. They do make note of where Hawkgirl does say you fly throughout space, you do all this stuff, but yet you snowboarding down a hill, you giddy like a schoolgirl. I don't remember her exact line, but it's something like that. And I just think that's so funny, especially when you even think about the fact that he's a Marine.
The things he's done and seen. But it's those simple pleasures. It's those little things that we find the most joy in.
Yeah, and of course, the title of the episode is Comfort and Joy. And so each story kind of has their own way of addressing that topic of comfort and joy and how it is different for different people. And this episode, that story, even shows it more with the fact that Green Lantern shows all of this stuff he likes to do, but then Hawkgirl says, well, can I show you what I like to do? And they decide to go to a bar and ultimately get into a bar fight, and it's craziness from there.
If that's not holiday spirit, or holiday spirits, I guess, is what it ended up being, I don't know what is. Yeah, good for her. And so... And you were the one that pointed this out to me. How about the Swamp Thing cameo just kind of floating through back there? Spoiler alert for everybody.
Yeah, I'm not 100% that it's meant to be Swamp Thing, but it eerily looks like Swamp Thing.
Oh, that's Swamp Thing.
Yeah, when you go to watch the episode, I'll cue it up for you. When they arrive right in front of the bar, they haven't entered the bar yet, but as soon as they arrive and land, you see a figure that looks like Swamp Thing walk behind Green Lantern and Hawkgirl. Afraid I had to sneak.
Okay. Yeah, if you pay attention, he's there, and it's most definitely Swamp Thing. And while we're kind of talking about something that and not to downgrade this particular plot line, but I'm going to use it to talk about something else for a second. The intro to Justice League is the best intro to a cartoon television show or any television show, I would say, ever. Even better than Batman the Animated Series, which I love dearly. But you want to talk about comfort and joy, it's those first notes of the intro and then the graphics for Justice League.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a little peek behind the curtain. So Blake and I actually sat and watched this episode right before we recorded. It's one of the first times we've done that for the podcast. So we actually we're doing this through the internet. So Blake's at his house, I'm at my house, but we did a screen capture, whatever you call it. Yeah, screen share. Screen share of the episode and watched it together. And when the opening started with a dun da da da, both of us just went greatest opening ever.
Yeah, you've got I know I was have this smile on my face the entire intro, and you can't help it because it's just. And again, circling back to that comfort and joy, it just brings you back to a point in time when, for me, life was a little simpler. You didn't have so much going on. And you could just sit back and enjoy something like the Justice League TV show.
Yeah, and this being Justice League television show, of course, the Green Lantern and Hawkgirl, I will say it is the weakest of the three stories that's being told. It does serve its purpose. It is building that relationship, which is going to come to fruition in the finale in Star-Crossed. And the story is really designed because you got to think the series is geared towards, the younger audience, and they don't want these drama-heavy stories that, especially the Superman and Martian Manhunter story was.
Wow, yeah.
The Flash story had a little bit of action, but the Green Lantern and Hawkgirl story was really there to provide us the superhero action for this episode.
Yeah, the other two stories, a holiday-centric message, a very specific message. And you're right, the younger viewers, you're going to start to lose them if you don't intersperse that with some action sequences. So I get why having to do that, but the other two stories, man, are really why you watch this particular episode.
Yeah, so that leads us into the second story, kind of the story that I feel is kind of in the middle, and that's the story of the Flash and his encounter with the Ultra Humanite. So it starts off with the Flash arriving at an orphanage in Central City. Apparently, one of his traditions that he does is he decides to give a gift to the kids in an orphanage. The lady who runs the orphanage actually says, he's almost here in his red suit. And it almost made me stop and think, could the Flash actually be Santa Claus?
Never seen them in the same place at the same time.
Well, and his superpower does allow him to run so fast. He could make it to every house delivering gifts in one night.
Laramy, I'm getting a text from the FBI, and they're saying stop talking right now. They want you to. It says, please tell Laramy not to say any more.
Yeah, we'll get into this a little bit more in the third story with Superman. This episode, and we're not going to make any claims here on Moving Panels, but this episode does kind of toy with the existence of Santa Claus.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how I feel about that.
Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. So the director of the orphanage, the head lady, you were talking about her introduction of the Flash. He's almost here, everyone's favorite guy in a red suit. And then she says, everyone's favorite superhero. Okay, let me make a lot of people angry. Whose favorite superhero is the Flash? Because I want to talk to you right now. You tweet the show, put it on TikTok. I want to know who you are and how in the world you can say the Flash is your favorite superhero. It doesn't exist.
Well, the people of Central City, I think, do hold the Flash to high regard.
Okay. Well, the people of Central City can send me an email. Blakely, go ahead and send it to me.
Yeah. I do like also, since we kind of were hitting on this with Santa, I do like one thing that this episode does, and this is me personally, this is my personal kind of thing here, is that without actually going there, this episode really does hit on the biblical aspect of Christmas.
A lot of almost not necessarily subliminal, but stuff in the background in the episode.
Yeah, I mean, we get, again, you got to think, the episode's titled Comfort and Joy, mm-hmm. which comes from a Christmas hymn.
Right.
And there is, in the orphanage, there is a cross as a tree topper. There is a lot that Martian Manhunter will see when he is going about the town of Smallville. And then the fact that because this is a big thing, especially around the 2000s and whatnot, but the fact that they just blatantly call it Christmas, and they don't say they're going home for the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
They say they're going home for Christmas. And I just found that, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the aspect of that, and the little things that Paul Dini put into the episode.
Yeah, certainly. And I would imagine probably, calling on some life experience maybe in his writing, which he does a lot. I've read some of the stuff he's talked about where he pulls a lot from his own life into the stories that he writes. But it's a great job of making a Christmas centric specific episode.
Yeah. So back to the Flash's story. He arrives at the orphanage, finds out what the kids want. It is the the worst part of this episode. They're watching a commercial that features this DJ Ducky, which is this toy that is a rapping duck, but he also farts.
Any diss to Howard the Duck of the Marvel Cinematic Universe there?
I don't think so. I don't know. It was bad.
It was bad, real bad.
Yeah, I didn't get it. I like that it does show kind of just that really random toy that kids want at Christmas. This was 3 years before Tickle Me Elmo, for people who remember the Tickle Me Elmo craze and how every kid in the world wanted the Tickle Me Elmo. And then while we were watching it, Blake, you brought up Turbo Man.
Yeah, another fictional toy that every kid wanted, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jingle All the Way, another one of my favorite holiday movies. But it's the same kind of craze. Every year, whether it's Furby or Tickle Me Elmo or the fictional Turbo Man, there's always that one toy the kids are really wanting. And for these kids, it happened to be a farting duck,
Yeah. Although I did get a kick out of, as Flash is watching the commercial, he kind of giggles himself just to show the kid inside of the Flash. Which, random trivia here, not random trivia, but a little trivia bit here to talk about the Flash. I always get a kick out of the fact that the Flash is voiced by Michael Rosenbaum in this. Another thing is, a lot of people get this Flash wrong. This is not Barry Allen. This is Wally West.
Right.
And I think a lot of people forget that. But back to Michael Rosenbaum. He's voiced by Michael Rosenbaum, which for people who don't know, Michael Rosenbaum was also Lex Luthor on the TV show Smallville. And so the fact that he, while doing Lex Luthor on Smallville, this wasn't like did one and then did the other one. Smallville started in 2001. This is 2003. He's doing Justice League and doing the voice of the Flash, while over on the WB, he is playing Lex Luthor on Smallville. And I always love that.
Duality of man, right there.
Yeah. So Flash is now on it's turned into Jingle All the Way for the Flash. He is on the mission to get this DJ Ducky, which is sold out everywhere. In the pursuit to try to find it, an explosion occurs. He is drawn to a museum where the Ultra Humanite is. Now, let me backtrack a little bit. He has gotten a DJ Ducky by this point. He has ran all the way overseas to where it is manufactured. He has gotten the last one, and he's on his way back. Explosion happens. He runs in the Ultra Humanite into a museum, who is doing the most random thing. He's destroying a museum because he doesn't like the art.
Well, I can't. And so I'm a little torn here because it may be the world's worst museum once we get inside of it. So I kind of agree with Ultra Humanite's, opinions on art and government spending. I don't know if that's a bad thing or a good thing.
Yeah, we don't really know if, when we get inside of it, it's not great art. I'm not I'm not going to say I'm the best critic of art. I appreciate art. But this one, when you look at some of the sculptures, part of me went, is that what the art really looked like? Or had the Ultra Humanite already been destroying things?
Yeah. Well, as an art critic, I can tell you my personal opinion is that art is bad.
So while they are battling it out, DJ Ducky is a casualty of war and ends
Rest
up
in
getting
peace,
crushed.
DJ Ducky.
Do I?
R.I.P. my man. R.I.P.
So it is destroyed. Once Ultra Humanite discovers that Flash had intended it for a group of orphans, Ultra Humanite actually decides to call a truce.
And that's all it took. Like that's kind of what blows my mind there. It's like, that's all it took? Like, we could have been done with this a long time ago, eons ago, even.
Well, and that's why I think he was a good villain for this, because he does have that, that.
He's got that human compassion. Yeah.
Yeah, and his whole being a villain is more of, he wants the world to more understand, be more cultured, and he wants to bring them up to his intelligence. And so when he realizes that this is for children who are, I think he looks upon them as more still developing.
Yeah, they have an air of innocence and ability to still kind of be molded at that age.
Yeah. So he sees an ability to use that for even his benefit. I do love that they immediately revealed the Humanite's plan. They have the Humanite knock out the Flash, and then immediately have the Flash wake up and see what the Humanite's doing. I like that they didn't then cut to one of the other stories, and you're going, wait, what? Because I feel that would have taken you away from that story.
Yeah, it kept me in the moment with them, as you're saying, keeping it right there and not going to another story and having me lose the feeling. Paul Dini and the writing did a really good job of keeping it right there and building on the momentum of that story.
Yeah. Flash wakes up, finds out Ultra Humanite is fixing the toy, and wants to help Flash give it to the orphans, which they ultimately do. And
it doesn't blow up, first of all.
Yeah.
It doesn't explode.
No, but it also doesn't rap and fart anymore. Instead, it tells them the story of the Nutcracker.
Not my favorite holiday musical, but it's a better choice than a farting duck.
Well, here's my thing. How long was the Flash knocked out?
In Flash time or in regular time?
Well, here's the thing. So when the Ultra Humanite gives them the DJ Ducky, and DJ Ducky begins to tell the story of the Nutcracker, you have to think, did he have time to record himself reading the entire story of the Nutcracker? Or did Ultra Humanite just happen to have a file of him reading the Nutcracker?
There it is. I'm going to believe the latter of the two, that he just has a collection of himself reading classical literature.
Because he doesn't like podcasts. He just listens to himself.
He doesn't.
Reading.
Yeah. Podcasts are so far beneath him. He's certainly not tuning into this episode where I'm rambling on about asinine and childhood things. But he definitely has a folder, like you said, of his own self-recordings of children's and adult books, I guess.
So, of course, this episode wraps up with, the story, the Flash and the Ultra Humanite wraps up with Ultra Humanite showing the kids a deeper meaning of Christmas, that it's more important than just the toys and the gifts, which I liked. And then it ends with Ultra Humanite agreeing to go to prison, and the Flash decides to gift him with the most hideous Christmas tree.
Okay, so correct me. I'm trying to really process all this. He hates the art in the museum because it's ugly and garbage, and loves the aluminum tree despite the fact that it looks eerily similar to the garbage in the museum.
Yeah. I don't know what it. I mean, they make it a sweet moment. I'm not gonna try to diminish that. It's a sweet moment where the Ultra Humanite, gets to enjoy Christmas even in his prison cell. And he does mention that it takes him back to his childhood, and so it's a great
nostalgia
moment,
there.
But it is an ugly Christmas tree.
Hideous. Yeah. Very. I mean, Charlie Brown would have thrown that aluminum Christmas tree out.
No, Charlie Brown wouldn't have bought it. Remember, he doesn't buy any of the aluminum trees.
You're right. God, you're so right. That's why I keep you around in my circle of friends, Laramy. Always educating.
All right, and moving on to the final of the third, and in my opinion, the best of the third.
Hands down.
Of the three, is the Superman and Martian Manhunter story. So, as we mentioned, Superman, or we might as well just say Clark, because he is Clark Kent for the remainder of the episode. Clark invites Martian Manhunter Jean to his home in Smallville to spend Christmas. And it is obvious from the get-go that John is extremely uncomfortable with everything about being there.
As a Martian, I would imagine you'd be extremely uncomfortable no matter where you go. So I don't get why he didn't just take a more human form at that point in time.
Well, I think, because part of it is about him being himself. And he knows that at least with the Kents, he doesn't have to be in a human form. He can be the Martian Manhunter in that form. But what was so great was the performance by Carl Lumbly, who is the voice of Martian Manhunter. Side note, if you're not familiar with Carl Lumbly, he's the voice of John Jones, or the Martian Manhunter in this. To have that same connection that kind of Michael Rosenbaum had, he actually plays Jean's father, Marin Jean, on the show Supergirl.
I'm my own grandpa.
Yeah. So, he plays his own father, I guess you could say, on Supergirl. But a great performance, in that voice acting, because he shows that it's not just necessarily his lack of knowledge about Christmas, his lack of understanding about Christmas, but it's almost like he realizes that Christmas is a holiday about family, and and he represents that sadness in the fact that he doesn't have a family.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the voice acting in this, and again, I'll go back to even the writing. Like, I hurt for John Jones here, watching this, and just thinking about, some people do spend the holiday without someone, and you hope there are people out there like Clark who are willing to reach out a hand to those people. I think it's a great message.
Yeah, and again, he arrives. He's unsure, even to the Kents, whether he should refer to Clark as Clark or as Superman. He's trying his best. He tries to speak to the cat at the Kent's house, which, by the way, is Streaky the Super Cat. Look him up if you don't know who Streaky the Super Cat is. But the cat, hisses at him and runs away. He is given a gift by Martha Kent, and he feels bad about it because he didn't give a gift. And you can tell that he's trying his best, but he's just got this disconnect, and it's such a great story.
It's a great story. Unlike the gift that Martha Kent gives John Jones, can we just circle back for just a second? And speaking of Charlie Brown, talk about this sweater design and sweater size.
So Martha gives Jean a gift, which turns out to be a sweater, and they do have exposition to explain it. She says that she has a group, I think she even says at her church, that they knitted sweaters and they had a few extra, and she decided to give one to Jean. My thing is that Jean is a superhero. He's probably 6 foot plus, muscular, and all that. He puts on this sweater.
As big as Clark, if not bigger.
He puts on this sweater, and the sleeves are too long. It's bulky. It's definitely too big for him, which he then, because he can shapeshift, he then makes himself even more muscular in order to fit into it, and even makes the joke, says, I can grow into it. But my question was, who did they knit this sweater for?
It's like the women's group made it for Solomon Grundy. Like, one of the women was like, I saw the man who was born on a Monday and his shirt was all torn. Let's make him a sweater. Like, it's huge. It's a huge sweater. Why is it that big? I could live in it.
Yeah, it's definitely ridiculous. But you try not to think about too much of the stuff like that and enjoy the episode for what it is. But in this podcast, we're going to pick things apart.
Sometimes you can't help it. It's still a great story. So the story part, Laramy.
Yeah, so it's Christmas Eve, and Jean decides to leave Christmas night. But hold up, I want to go back. We have not talked about how Clark is very subtly in this. Clark is the biggest kid. So it not only is there the joke in there about how Clark tries to peek at his presents, and so the Kents have to wrap his gifts in lead-lined paper, like lead foil.
It seems like a throwaway line, but it's such a good line. It's funny for the reasons of Clark being Superman.
Yeah, and even when Jonathan says we have to wrap his presents in lead-lined foil, and Clark pauses and he says, "You mean Santa wraps them?"
Santa. I know him.
Yeah. So again, they're playing on the whole Santa's existence in this. But even, and I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, even when it's Christmas morning, when Clark wakes up, he leaps out of bed.
In a single bound.
Yeah. Just so excited.
But that's the thing, man. And kind of talking about that and how his parents He's a grown man. He's a superhero. He's from another planet, but his parents still play into that. And that's the thing when we look back. As we get older, we realize the magic of the holidays lies in how special other people make it for us.
Yes.
Like the people that we surround ourselves with and are willing to buy into those traditions that bring joy and bring comfort. Like that's the magic of the holiday.
And that's what this entire episode is. I mean,
Right.
that's what Green Lantern and Hawkgirl are doing for each other. That's the whole reason why Ultra Humanite and Flash have their truce for the night.
Correct.
It is that bringing people together at Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And Martian Manhunter being the character that in this episode, he's unfamiliar with Christmas. We then get to see him on Christmas Eve go through the town of Smallville and kind of just witness people at Christmas. And we see him do all these different things. We see him even play Santa for a scene.
Have a couple of cookies.
Yes. Which little trivia fact here. If you notice, the cookies are Oreo cookies.
Absolutely.
And when you see Jean's arm, reach in, grab a cookie, reach back, you hear him, to the how much he loves the cookies. If I'm going to go into a moving panel here, that is actually in the comic books. That Martian Manhunter loves Oreo cookies.
Dude, I had no idea.
Yes.
It is a good cookie.
Yeah. Another comic book related thing here is that when he is going around town, he turns into a human. And as many know, his human form is John Jones. Very similar to John Jones.
Yes.
But
without the
John
French
Jones.
accent.
This is actually the first time in the Justice League series that he turns into John Jones.
This is just an episode full of knowledge drops, like just trivia knowledge drops, Larry. What a gift to the people right now.
Well, let me give you one more. This is goes into Kara's bedroom. They establish that he's going to stay in Kara, Supergirl's bedroom. Mm-hmm. There is a stuffed animal dead center of Supergirl's bed. That stuffed animal is a stuffed animal of Zook, who, if you're not familiar with, was the Martian Manhunter's goofy sidekick back in the 60s when everything was just a little crazy and weird.
Don't you just love like the tie-ins though? Like it's those little details, and you have to think again. I keep giving him the credit, but you have to think Paul Dini is like the mastermind behind a lot of that.
Paul Dini and Bruce Timm. I mean, Bruce Timm, we got to remember, is also
absolutely
producer behind all of these stuff. And so, the two of them, and of course, the two of them together created Harley Quinn. They were just geniuses when it came to the animated series, and both of them were so familiar with the comics and the history, the lore, and everything that you needed.
And that's when you get the absolute best writing, when you have somebody who's passionate about something in on it. But so I'm going to let you take it, but I'm thinking about just the end of the episode, that end scene, and I've got chicken skin right now. Just thinking about how it ends. It's such a good wrap up.
No, go ahead.
You end it with the Kents waking up and Clark making the comment. He said he didn't bring anything. He said he didn't bring a gift, and I think therein lies he doesn't have a physical gift, but his presence, being in the company of those that you care about and you love and you would literally and figuratively fight for, is what it's all about at the end of the day. And I don't know, I get a little tongue-tied trying to express it, but it's just such a cool fitting in to an episode that centers around, as you've said so many times, that comfort and joy of other people, of making sure that you're surrounding yourselves with those you care and you love about.
Yeah, so it ends with Martian Manhunter sitting next to the window in Kara's room. Streaky is actually in his lap, and he is in his true Martian form, and he is singing. Now, he's singing something, that's a Martian song.
Yeah, can't really tell what it is.
Yeah, but you can tell that he, in his own way, has figured out what Christmas is.
It's like opera music. I don't understand it, but I get the feeling behind it. So, no, I can't understand what he's singing, but I get the feeling, the emotion behind it. And he feels at home, so to speak.
Yeah.
He feels somewhere safe and comfortable. And again, maybe not everybody's going to agree, but it just goes to show you too that no matter how hard you try not to like cats, everybody ends up liking cats. There he was, holding Streaky. Yeah, just if you had Streaky around, Laramy, you would love cats. Okay, you would love Streaky, and you would care for Streaky.
I'd rather have Crypto. Give me Crypto.
Okay, all right.
All right, so there's our episode. Go watch it. I mean, we can't do it justice as Blake is saying. We can't really relay the story the way you see it played out in this episode. It is a great episode, but that's jumping into our final decision, which again here on Moving Panels we call bag it, stack it, or trade it. Bag it, making it a keeper. Stack it means something you kind of put to the side and you come to it when you want, and then trade it means you want to get rid of it. I think this is pretty obvious, but go ahead, Blake, make your decision.
Laramy, this is one of those that for the longest time I had just kind of stacked. Like it was just sitting off to the side. And it's like one of those comics you come across and you find and you realize how much you missed it. I'm bagging it, and it's getting rewatched not just on the holidays, but throughout the year at this point in time. Bag it, keep it safe, treasure it for always.
Yeah, I mean, like I've already alluded to, this is a bag it. This is one that you really do you do tend to forget about it, I think, because it's not one of those things that gets played. You don't see it, get replayed on television and whatnot. But if you know about it, you want to go back and see it. Like I said, every character in this, with each story, you get a different spin on Christmas. And each pairing, as we talked about, shares their traditions, shares their feelings with one another. It's, and they have open hearts and open minds about it, which is what Christmas is. I mean, that is what, I don't like to date this show an awful lot, but here we are in 2020, and that's what this world needs. It needs people to give the benefit of the doubt, to accept people for what they want to do, and to be open-minded to it and have an open heart about it. This is the best of humanity on a show that has nothing to do with humans. Really the only humans in this episode are the Kents, the Flash, and Green Lantern. And, Flash and Green Lantern have superpowers. None of the other main characters are even human, but yet this episode shows us the best of humanity, especially at this time of the year at Christmas.
I probably couldn't have said it any better. Yeah, it's an episode that shows that no matter what your traditions are or where you're coming from, whether it's this planet or another, like just be appreciative of what you have and who you have.
Yeah, I think we couldn't said it better. And it's a great note to end this episode on. I, of course, and I'll speak for all of my other guest hosts on Moving Panels. We hope that all of you have a great and wonderful and joyous holiday season, a Merry Christmas, and a wonderful and Happy New Year, because our next full episode will be in the next year. We just wish you all the best.
I echo that completely and wholeheartedly. Take care of yourselves. Enjoy the holidays. Take care of each other. And we look forward to seeing you in 2021 for sure.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Blake. It was
Thanks, Laramy.
Fun getting to do this one. And for Moving Panels, I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page. Any comments you want to make before?
You got to start prepping me on the intros. You gotta, let me know what's about to happen. I'm trying to find a fart. The farting duck bit's good. That's the genius part of that one for sure.